It's great to welcome to the program today Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, Allison Riggs, who is in the middle of, to call it an interesting situation would be such an understatement. So I'm glad to talk about it. Welcome to the program. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, David.
So, to kind of set the stage at the 40,000 foot level, 8-year terms on the state Supreme Court in North Carolina. You sort of recently, although not so recently, even though we are still actually waiting to get to the end of the story, you recently won re-election by 734 votes. This roughly works out to 50.01% to 49.99%. An admittedly small margin of victory in terms of the number of votes and in terms of the percentage. There was a period, and this is where I'm going to bring you in to help me explain exactly what's going on. There was a period during which it seemed as though your opponent was challenging about 60,000 votes. That's the biggest number that I found. And subsequently, through a number of processes, which you'll tell us about, the number of votes in question has been reduced, reduced, and reduced. And right now, there are actually some specific voters in this election whose ballots need to be cured, or to put it a different way, re-verified that it was indeed they who intended to vote the way they voted. Give us like the overview of how the situation came to be as it is right now.
Right. Well, starting at 30,000 foot, like you mentioned, I won this race by 734 votes, two independent recounts confirmed my win, one confirming the actual margin. And rather than concede his loss in my election, my opponent decided to challenge voters and try and get ballots tossed. The number he reached was actually as high as 68,000 North Carolinians whose votes he wanted to toss rather than concede his loss. We have been fighting for it. We're approaching the 6 month mark. For 6 months, we have been fighting for every eligible North Carolinian's lawful votes to be counted. And I want to be crystal clear that the voters that he is challenging, they fall into different buckets. That's kind of why the scope is narrowed, but these are voters who did nothing wrong. They followed all the rules as they were on the books on election day. Their votes were valid on election day. And it is only because my opponent wants to change the rules of a game after the game has been played and he lost, which, most kindergartners understand is fundamentally unfair, that these voters are at risk. Now, the biggest bucket ever was the 60,000 voters, but there was another 8,000 on top of that. My parents fell in the 60,000, so they registered with their military IDs, and my opponent alleged there was some information missing from their voter registrations, which was not the case, and he's lost on that. Then he's been challenging the votes of military and overseas voters who use a federal voting mechanism to vote. So it's a portal, it's an online portal. It was specifically designed by Congress because deployed military or activated military folks who are away from their homes and their families have trouble voting. And you can understand why that's the case, right? You're on the battlefront, like every worry, every stressor, every little bit of minutia you have to deal with is something that distracts you from life or death. And it can mean life or death for these people who raise their hand to serve us. So I've been fighting for those voters. That the military and overseas voters has shrunk a little bit too. It's not settled. So I don't want your viewers to think that, oh, well, we're down to 1,600 votes. That's being disputed. My opponent wants to disenfranchise more military and overseas voters. He's not content with just 1,600. So it is somewhere between 1,600 and 7 or 8,000. But these are largely people who raised their hands to serve us, and they deserve someone to defend them the way they defend us. And I am that person. I will not give an inch whether it's 68,000, 8,000, or one voters. This is the fundamental right to vote. Every vote is precious, and not one being tossed is acceptable. And so I will not give an inch in this legal fight. But I'm happy also to talk to you about the chase and cure process if you
Yeah.
want to
So
shift to that.
I want to get to that in a moment because there are potentially action items here about if you believe that someone you know may be in exactly this situation of having to cure. I want to talk about that. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, it seems reasonable to me that no matter which side of a 734 vote margin of victory or loss one is on, to seek some kind of verification. It sounds to me, having studied and read this from the outside, that the processes that had already taken place before the attempt to get rid of this group of, again, 1,600 to 68,000 votes, it seems as though it would be reasonable to say, let's look at what those recounts say. But that was done. You're not advocating here to say do nothing. It's just that
Right.
there have been things done already.
And I'm a former voting rights attorney. I've litigated election law cases. I know how important faith in election administration is. So if you look back at my emails and my social media through November and December, I was saying loudly, recounts are good. We want recounts. We want people to see transparently how our system works. And so yes, it was very important to me that people understood that I fully supported that recount process.
Okay, so let's now get to what is at stake here. Um, I don't know for sure the political leanings of members of the military in your state. My instinct is that this is not a play necessarily on the vote share of military members that supported you versus your opponent, but it's more about a population that may be hard to reach right now and for whom it would be logistically difficult to even necessarily know that now there is a process they have to go through. Give me your assessment of is it because this is the group that used the system you described? Is it because it will be difficult to actually get a hold of them? What do you think the strategy is?
Right, and thank you for that question. It lets me tell your followers an important point. So, 32,000 North Carolinians used this federal mechanism of voting across. North Carolina has 100 counties. My opponent wasn't challenging all military and overseas voters. He was challenging those voters from the four most Democratic counties in the
Ah,
state. So the 6,000, 7,000, that wasn't statewide. So he, in fact, is saying if you are a military, if you are a service member in Guilford County, that's where Greensboro, North Carolina is, and you used this federal mechanism because you were deployed out west to do Helene cleanup in October and November. So you were out west. Your vote should not count. But if you were a military voter who is based out of Onslow County, where Camp Lejeune is, he's fine with your vote counting. Those voters voted the exact same way. And so it's cherry picking which voters are in and which voters are out. And it's really gets us to the big problem, the big threat to democracy here. And I need people to understand that what's a North Carolina problem today is a Michigan and an Arizona and a California and a Georgia problem tomorrow. So
right.
this is not just us. If someone doesn't like the outcome of an election, like what we saw in 2020, Trump Biden, if someone doesn't like the outcome of an election, a democracy cannot exist in a world where the disappointed losers can change the election laws after the election, decide to selectively toss some ballots that they think were against them and call that a day. I mean, just democracy cannot exist in those conditions. And so we know that this is an existential fight for democracy. If even one vote gets tossed, it's opening Pandora's box. We will not be able to contain the spread, and we're fighting as if I'm fighting as if it's not about me. It's not even about all the voters in North Carolina that I'm trying so desperately to protect, including people. My dad, I come from a proud military family. My dad and my brother served, both were deployed in war. This is personal for me, and I'm fighting for North Carolina's military families. But there is a national implication to this that I am fully cognizant of. And it's why I am fighting tooth and nail to make sure that we don't backslide from democracy into something where it's just unimaginable.
Yeah, the strategy seems analogous to we should close down some polling places, but only in areas where we've calculated that making it more difficult to vote would be advantageous for us, the cherry picking that you're talking about. Now, in practical terms, if people are hearing this, who exactly should be hearing what is going on right now and trying to get in touch potentially with folks that meet? Is it people deployed from certain counties specifically should double check whether they are now being expected to cure?
Yes. So let me step back and say that we're dual tracking this problem. So I am fighting every day in federal court. I am in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals this
Right,
week, fighting for a stay to keep this quote unquote cure process from going into effect. It's because I know that it's a terrible precedent and these voters did nothing wrong. There's nothing to cure. But we're
right,
also preparing for if we do need to cure, these are going to be some of the hardest voters you could ever imagine to get in touch with. They're away from home. Imagine being a submariner deployed for 3, 4 months at a time. When the clock starts, and it could be late this week, when notice goes out to these voters, there will be 30 days from when that notice goes out for them to um, get information back to North Carolina, back to their county boards. So we're going to need, right now, it is largely Guilford County voters who have the target painted on their back. But as I said, my opponent wants more counties, more voters in the crosshairs. And so I don't feel confident telling people, oh, you're safe outside of Guilford County because that
right.
could change. What I need people outside of North Carolina to do is to visit my website, riggsforourcourts.com. There's a tab at the top that says the Griffin list. This is going to be, if it would be funny if it weren't about the very soul of democracy, but it's a game of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I
Right.
need you to look through your contact lists. I need you to look through the lists of challenged voters. And if you know one of them, reach out to them and
Right.
see if they know that they're on the list, because these could have been students studying abroad, military members and their families deployed. We've heard stories of military families moving from base to base who literally don't even have a place where they can get notice from the Board of Elections right now. They could be people in the Foreign Service. If you know anyone on that list, whether it's in your phone book, whether it's on your social media friends list, followers list, reach out to them, because that person to person connection is going to be much more powerful than cold calling or trying to email people out of the blue and say, look, you may have a little more than 30 days to make sure that your vote counted in the November election. Um, Reach out to Justice Riggs' campaign to make sure that we help you get in the information that you need to make sure your vote gets counted.
So this is riggsforourcourts.com. The Griffin list is the list of folks. Now, I want to make sure people in the audience understand, even if you don't live in North Carolina, if you have any connection to the military, for example, you might know someone from when you were in California, for example, or it really is worth looking through this because it's not, oh, we need 100,000. We're talking here about a margin of victory that's 734. And so this is really like a very specific and tangible ask.
That's right. it is such an accomplishable task. Is everyone, I think, knows someone, someone they went to high school with, someone they went to college with, someone who has a kid that goes to school in North Carolina. It costs nothing to say, "Hey, John, I know your kid went to school um, in North Carolina." Just checking that they weren't impacted by this. It costs
Right.
nothing, but it is going to, we essentially have to get this work viral to make sure that we find these voters, and it's going to be through a friend of a friend. Also, if folks have $5 to chip in, the legal bills are incredible. The Chase and Cure efforts, like we're going to be trying mail, digital outreach, purchasing data to try and find contact information for these voters
Yep.
because we're not going to leave one voter behind. When my dad went into war, he had a battle buddy who looked me in the eye before he deployed and he said, "I won't leave your dad behind, I promise you." And this is my chance to return the favor to service members who and their families who've gone through what we went through, and to say, I will not leave one voter behind. And whatever it costs, whatever it takes, I'm going to make sure these voters get heard and their votes get counted.
All right. It's a very narrow, a specific ask here, which I know my audience can help with. We've been speaking with Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, Allison Riggs. We're going to be following it, and I really appreciate your time and telling us what's going on today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone listening and caring about this fight.